I don't think I can chat yet. I can do it in Q&A.
Q&A maybe.
Q&A. Let me try, because there was a website that I use a lot, and we're going to spend a little time talking about more issues in publication and authorship, specifically Q&A. Well, let's hang on. Hello. Write a comment. Ask a question. Share updates. Start a discussion. How about this? So I've just put in a link for a website on predatory journals, which is something to learn about. And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, on a related issue, Shannon today is going to talk about a paper that has been flagged as unreliable. The larger picture here is this. We have, as you've learned, we humans have created an industry, the industry of scientific publication. And it's not simply the conceit of academics. Oh, I've got to see, here's my latest article. Isn't it wonderful? It's that what we've learned is those articles get you promoted. They get you promoted from assistant professor to associate professor, from associate professor to full professor. They get you grants in competitive environments. And I know Dr. Kosing has this experience. You go to a conference and they're introducing the keynote speaker, and they will say that he's the author of 250 journal articles. And whenever I hear that, I say, no, he's not. He has his name on 250 papers, but he's not an author of all of them. In other words, we have allowed this social mechanism to introduce a form of corruption that is so pervasive that we accept it. And so the challenge that you all face as your careers advance is you want to be able to participate in this community, but the criteria are not particularly transparent. And then along come entrepreneurs who've discovered how vain we all are, how much we love to see our names in print or in electrons, as the case may be. All right, so would it be okay, Dr. Kosei, if Ms. Schaden does her presentation, and then I want to talk a little bit more about predatory journals and transition into artificial intelligence. Would that be all right?
Yeah, sure. So you can share the slides, please. Yeah.
Okay, Doctor, 1 minute, please. I will switch off the camera and share the slides, okay?
Okay. How's your travel? Is okay for a conference or a talk about something? Dr. Ken?
I'm sorry, say again?
Your conference, you've been in a conference or something like this, or a talk last week?
I was on an airplane.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, you're going for a conference or just...
No, not last week. No, no, it wasn't a conference. I was visiting so in California,
all right.
a lot of, and there was just no way to come back without, sometimes, so I'm in Miami, and I don't understand how it works, but I'm going to Sacramento, which is where the University of California at Davis is. And sometimes there are direct flights from Miami to Sacramento, which is across the entire continent, right? It's a very long journey. But sometimes they don't have a single flight. So you have to I had to go to Texas or something or other, and it just takes a very long time. There was no way to avoid it, so thank you.
It's a little bit tedious process and takes, you feel tired actually. Yeah, flight is sometimes annoying.
And you may remember, if you've ever been to the airport in Dallas, Texas, which you might have been in your travels, it is a challenge.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, Shannon, if you are ready, you can start.
Yes, Doctor. Today we are going to talk about expression of concern on a paper that was introduced by scientists at Harvard and Duke universities. Next slide, Yara, please. Okay, so the paper is about COVID-19. It's mainly about the discovery of an antibody that neutralized all COVID-19 variants in a mice. So that was a very important finding, which give a promising results for like developing different vaccines for the COVID-19, especially because it's very highly mutant. Next, Yara, please. So the significance of the study was, first of all, that, as we mentioned, the COVID-19 poses a significant challenge because it's highly mutant, and also because the antibodies can provide long-term protection and benefits for many patients, especially after the pandemic. And finally, it was cited 36 times by different scientists and researchers. Now, regarding the authors and institution, next please. The number of authors in that paper was about 30 authors from various institutions. A lot of them was experience in immunology and virology. Additionally, they performed the experiment or the research in Frederick Alt Lab, which is focuses a lot on immunology and antibody in general in Duke's University. And finally, there was a lot of collaboration between different institutes, not only Duke's University, such as Boston Children's Hospital, Harvard Medical School, and Duke University. Next, Yara, please. The key researcher in that team was Frederick Alt. He was the lead researcher, and he had extensive expertise in immunology and molecular genetics. And there are other authors such as Tom, Chen, and Barton. They have crucial insights regarding the study findings. Next, Yara. But Frederick Alt has a history of retraction. He introduced a paper in 2012 in Nature University and in Nature Journal, and it was retracted because the result was irreproducible. They wasn't able to repeat the results, and also that was 16 of the co-authored paper was flagged. They were not retracted, but they were flagged instead, and there was a lot of flagging for different papers for these authors. It doesn't prove misconduct, but it can indicate that it's not very reliable research. Next, Yara, please. So there was an expression of concern, next Yara, which is a formal journal notice to the readers that they warn the readers that it's not very reliable and they shouldn't depend on very much. It is not severe as retraction, it's less severe. It happened in November 21, which is very recent. Next, Yara. So the timeline of the events was it was published in 2022, and then it was cited between 2022 and 2024, and then there was an expression of concern during this year, and because of data reliability issue. Next, Yara. There was concern regarding the reliability of two figures, and because some authors actually contacted the journal and told them that some data were unreliable. Next, Yara. Regarding the journal and institutional response. Next, Yara. The journal, as we mentioned, give a notice and expression of concern regarding the study, and also this is the first expression of concern in the journal history, which can affect the journal integrity and its like reputation. Next, Yara. Thank you very much. Anyone has any question?
Remember, you honor your colleague by asking questions.
Yes, Dalia, please.
First of all, thank you, Shadan, for this presentation. You said something that some of the result was irreproducible. That means that other research cannot obtain the same result when they repeat the study. What was the result that they did not have it the same? Like what?
The study was about that they discover some antibodies that can neutralize COVID-19, which means that those antibodies were not reliable. Maybe they were ineffective, maybe they targeted COVID-19 dead particles, not alive particles, so they will not cause a significant result when in the vaccination. That's I didn't actually read the paper. I tried to find it, but I didn't find it. So I don't know
maybe.
exactly what was
Yes,
the
I
result.
understand. Maybe it was retracted already. Thank you.
Yeah. No worries.
A good question, and it raises an important issue when Shadan mentioned the problem of reproducibility. She was mentioning something that has been a major issue in the literature for more than 10 years now. You can see intuitively why it's a problem. If I do a study, I'm looking at my screen, and then going right next to me, then Shadan, Dr. Kosei, Dr. Mohammed, Saja, Basant, Noor, Hiba do the same experiment, and they get different results. Then what have I found? We want the world, and this is ultimately a question about the relationship between our inquiries and the real world. That's my desk I'm knocking on. There's a world there, and what we hope we do with science is learn about how that world works. If different scientists get different results when they ask the same question, how do we explain that? And it led to a very, and it still goes on, it continues, concern about rigor and reproducibility. Dr. Kosei, how would you say rigor in Arabic? Rigor is a very interesting English word. Meticulousness, attention to detail, not being sloppy.
Can I say it, Doctor?
Yeah.
I think معناها الصرامة العلمية.
Yeah, but this word is even in Arabic is not too much good.
ممكن نحكي أمانة.
أو الدقة المنهجية بالأبحاث, something like that.
يعني زي قوة النتائج which تعكس على قوة النتائج. Strength is about the strength of the results, and they are reflecting exactly what's happening in the lab, maybe something like this. يعني ما في الصرامة يعني الصرامة معناها الشدة, ما بعرف إذا بتزبط. Yeah,
it is an interesting
maybe
concept.
don't have exactly the same
Of course.
word.
But the
Doctor,
concept
maybe
is one.
strength?
What's that?
Strength or rigidity?
It's related to strength. It's strength in method, caution and attention to detail in doing the experiment. Well, the point, and it was beautifully raised, is this, and we talked about it a while ago. And I'm going to ask you if you remember the name of the philosopher that I mentioned. What this study shows, and what Shadan's presentation makes clear, is that even really important scientists at very important universities sometimes are not very careful in their work, because if this were true and there were such an antibody, that would be scientifically really interesting. Did they really discover it though? And now you're concerned that their data don't actually support that. In other words, they became so enamored or in love with or obsessed by their hypothesis that maybe they were lax or were not careful in interpreting data to support the hypothesis. This, remember, is due to Karl Popper. Do you all remember the name Karl Popper? Popper, the philosopher who argued. Brief review. Karl Popper, yes, Bassam, before I begin, please.
I wanted to say what he did.
Please do.
He's the scientist or the philosopher that talked about falsifiability, which means if you can't say that something is false or you can't test it, then it's not scientific.
Now that was, as I told you, in the 20th century, in the 20s and 30s, and it was a real concern for two reasons. One of which, people, and you see this a lot, to say that what you've done is scientific gives it credibility, means you have to take it seriously. It would be irrational not to regard a well-designed study as telling us about the world. But Popper says, well, some of your studies, even if they're well-designed, are easy. If it's an easy test of your hypothesis, then there's less reason to believe your hypothesis is true. You want, as a scientist, to have difficult tests, which is very easy to say, but to a room full of students, you want to get your papers out the door. You want to be able to publish. We're all in our careers at that point where rigor and reproducibility are a problem, because you're not going to be judged on whether you were rigorous. You're going to be judged on the number of publications that you have and how good the journals are. The link I shared, did it come through in Q&A? Okay. Click around on that. I'll ask you next time to click around. It's about journals, predatory journals, which are created in the service of this scientific insecurity and conceit. They have the features of these journals are very, very quick acceptance, minimal, beautiful. Yes, I could have done that. Thank you for that. Here's a definition of them. There's a list of journals and publishers, including some that are, the criteria are important, but they are there because academics are so hungry for publications that there's a business in that. And they are predators, like raptors or eagles or tigers, to eat scientists who are so keen to have their article published. These are basically the way you get published is you send the manuscript in and you send them money. And once you give them money, then that's all they care about. They're not edited, they're not carefully peer reviewed, they're very quickly accepted. In other words, over the past quarter century, there's a new industry based entirely on the need of academics to have publications. And as our universities grow in size and in number, and as universities in different parts of the world, and I'm thinking of the Jordan University of Science and Technology, here's a university which has, over the last quarter century, gone like this in terms of size and quality. Where are you supposed to publish? Everybody can't publish in Nature and Science and The Lancet. So there are all these new journals, and you should click through thousands, as you can see, thousands of them, because it's good business. Please look at this. Include increasingly tenure committees and grant reviewers are in fact looking to see whether the journals were real journals or whether or not they were predatory journals. What's this Daftar di Sini. From Indonesia.
This is one of the publishers, actually. I'm not sure what's going in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Oh, it's
seems
wild. It is the Wild West. It's like cowboys. And then look, anybody in this room could have a website by the end of the day. It's very easy to create a website. You get people to send you money. You put their articles on it without reviewing them. They get to put the article in their CV, and you made some money. But you can see these look to be not credible. I'm not sure what the skull is in 4D, and it's free. Everything about it is suspicious. Okay. What if I were to ask you, what's wrong with creating one of these journals? And I would expect you all now to be able to say, if either any of us were to say, what's a good utilitarian analysis of predatory publications? That would be easy. It'd be easy because these journals have engendered distrust in science, have taken money from universities and individuals, have lowered trust in the published record. I mean, the list of things is long about how these journals have done damage, or if you will, reduce the amount of collective good or happiness in the world. If I were to ask you to give me a religious account, then you would either from the Quran or the Old Testament or the Bhagavad Gita be able to say these are deceptive. These are to make someone a predator means that they're exploiting vulnerable and weak people, namely students and scholars at universities where it's really hard to get published. So they're parasites and predators, and they use people as a means to an end. For a Kantian account, but what would it say in the New Testament? You would find the idea that exploiting vulnerable people is particularly wrong. I think there's language about this in one of the surah in the Quran as well, that some people are vulnerable and they deserve protection. Okay, Yara, you have been very patient. What were you going to say?
Can you hear me?
Now we do, yes.
Yeah. I also have a presentation to present about attracting people.
Say one more time for me, please.
Yes. Also a presentation to present. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
it's okay. She's talking about she has a presentation. She can present it now or not? Is okay?
Very good. Yes, indeed. Please do. On what topic?
But I think I'm not sure it's internet or something. The sound, Yara, is not that good.
About retracted paper. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay.
Please
I will
do.
share my screen. Okay. Entire screen. Okay. So is my screen now a bit? You can see it. Yeah. I think so.
Go ahead, please.
Okay. Okay. So the paper name is More A Than I, Testing for Large Language Model Plagiarism in Political Science. I will break down the title so we can understand. The large language models, they are a type of artificial intelligence program that can recognize and generate text among other tasks. So it's like ChatGPT, close to it. Plagiarism, as we know, it's stealing someone else's work. So this is the title again, so we can understand what does it mean. So the problem is the large language models can write fluent academic tests, so it's hard to detect AI written articles. Even the existing detectors, they are unreliable. They can show like false positive or negative or the opposite. يعني it's not reliable, the detectors that we have now. So the key idea of the paper that AI has a writing style. Certain words are overused by the AI in general. Humans use them less frequently. So these are the words that and examples of the words that the AI use more. So 2022 was the last clean year before the AI was introduced in this way that we have now. So the writer compared before versus after. So before it means 2022 and after the year of 2023. So he used a database which is OpenLX, and he was focusing on the political science articles. So what he found that there were words that were used very much more. In 2002, the word Dell, for example, was used less compared to 2023 that was used very much more. As we can see, it's almost tripled. So this is an example. So what does this suggest? It suggests that there were like undisclosed AI used by the writers now. The limitations of the paper that he published, or the hypothesis he made about the words, is that keywords are not a proof, and also that language evolves. So maybe the words are used more because of the language, not because of AI use. So the recommendations in general that the writer suggest was the clear AI guidelines, combined detection methods, and transparency from authors. So is there any questions? And thank you.
Questions?
Yeah.
Thank you. Very nicely done.
Thank you, Doctor. I will stop sharing.
Okay. Questions? What's the connection between artificial intelligence and predatory journeys?
هاي كيفك؟ سوري كنت فاتحة الكاميرا. تخيل هلا. يس.
يا آراء.
It's hard to hear you. We've lost her. Someone else then. Help your colleague who's having a technical difficulty and say something. What's the connection? Why in a Foundations of Bioethics course would we be spending time on reproducibility, retractions, and artificial intelligence? One answer. I'm going to speak very slowly in case someone wants to interrupt me.
Dr. Ken,
Yes, please.
I believe that we spend time on AI because it's emerging topic and it holds a lot of ethical issues. So, such as when we should integrate AI in healthcare and when we shouldn't. And yes.
Well put. In other words, and it's also of the moment. You all are students at one of the most extraordinary times that there are these tools, that there are these pressures on you, make it really important. While we think of our individual lives and careers as, well, I got this job, I finished that degree, I got this paper. What's happening now is a shift and it's a shift that is, well, I remember at the very beginning of the course, I showed you a copy. I still have it on my desktop. Hang on one second. I'm gonna share the screen. I'm gonna share my screen again, just so you just so you appreciate for your memory. Remember this picture? Philosophical transactions giving some account of the present undertaking, studies, and labors of the ingenious in many considerable parts of the world. Volume 1, 1665 and 1666. This is thought to be, and it is, the world's first scientific journal. You can calculate how old it is. Since then, what we've learned is extraordinary about the way scientists communicate and how that matters in research and how that matters also in clinical practice. Remember, if you're a pharmacist or you're a nurse or you're a physician, whatever you are, what your practice consists in is what other people have learned about that works. The humoral theory of medicine, remember? Black bile, green bile, phlegm, and blood was an attempt by philosophers and scientists to organize what it means to be sick, what it means to have a disease, what it means to be unwell. It was a false theory. It was a mistake. The way the history of science is very often false because we made honest mistakes. There have always been people who would try to cheat and make up data. That we've learned is not ethically very interesting. It is wrong, and you ought never to do it. What's happened with predatory publication and what's happened with artificial intelligence is it's not entirely clear anymore whether or not it's cheating. The journal had a website. They said it was peer reviewed. Does everybody who sends a manuscript need to become a detective to find out whether the journal is credible or not? Which is why there are these retraction watches and predatory journal websites to support you, in part because you are targets. You are targets. Depending on where you live, how old you are, whether or not you have a bank account or not, right? They're targeting people in Jordan, but not Somalia. Why? Because Jordan is a stable, comparatively prosperous country with great stability and a scientific tradition, which is growing. Dr. Koshe, I realized that I began doing this more than 10 years ago, that Dr. Whale got the grant from the NIH more than 10 years ago. And I have been honored to have this role with the Jordan University of Science and Technology for more than 10 years. And I have, as an outsider, seen this university evolve. I've been there several times. I've met people in charge. I would like to return, by the way, one of these days. COVID messed up everything. But the point is, there's potential here that there is not in other countries. And so a journal that will help you get published, which will help you get promoted, which will help you get a job, which will help you get a grant, which will make you more money, et cetera, that's what was happening at Harvard and Duke. I'm sure you've heard of Harvard. Duke is another very well-known American university. I'll tell you a story about Duke. This was a human subjects issue. The government of the United States, before it was overthrown by extremists and people like Donald Trump, actually was concerned about credibility and scientific rigor and the protection of human subjects. There was a Duke study where the analysis said, we're concerned about the consent process. We're not convinced that the participants in this research, which involved a study agent which could make people sick, that the consent process was clear enough and rigorous enough to make sure that that the people knew what they were getting into. They said, we've warned you, we'll be back in 6 months. The government came back in 6 months, and the problems were still there. And Duke officially said, We understand, but you understand this is Duke University, and we're a very, very large and important research place. And we're doing our best. We're gonna get to your concerns soon, but we're Duke. Duke's very important. Government said we'll be back in 6 months. The problems were still there. The government said, it's been a year, you have not fixed the problems. And the stance that Duke took was, we're still working on it, but you don't seem to appreciate how important our university is. This is a major research university with great laboratories and a lot of scientists, and we're coming up with cures for all these diseases. You don't understand, we're Duke. On the third visit, they said the same thing, and the government said, you don't understand, we're the government. And they shut down every scientific biomedical project at Duke University. Every one of them shut down by government order. That included some that my university was collaborating on. That all accruals will stop. There were issues about people taking drugs. It was a mess. But the government said, no more research for Duke. And Duke said, oh, you're right, we probably should do a better job. Duke then created its first program in research ethics and the responsible conduct of research when they were forced to by the government because they had been corrupt. Now, I would like to believe that Harvard would never do such a thing. But Shadan's report shows that there are individuals everywhere who will be quick. They will be hasty. They will not be rigorous. They will not attend to reproducibility. They lower trust in science. They treat people as a means to an end, and they are probably being deceptive in the process. Every one of those points was, a point for our purposes about where we look for moral knowledge. Where are the foundations of an assertion that Duke University was corrupt? I hope it's better now. I think they still think that they're really important and really good, but maybe they're not
Dr.
cheating.
Chen.
Yes, Shannon.
Yes, doctor. There was also a PhD student who is now a professor in China. So it's across the globe. It's not only in one country, which is very concerning.
It is a virus. We want to live in a world where countries get along with each other, and one can be proud of one's country. Not because one's a nationalist or because as one wants to be boastful, but there's a sense in which, look, and one of the things about the United States that I have always been a little bit proud of is how there have always been scientists from around the world who wanted to come here. Why? Some of the reasons are good and honest reasons that they're, or for that matter, England or France or Germany, right? The country that produced the philosophical transactions in the first journal in the world, namely the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom, as you know, is a very old and complicated country. I'm from America, and so when we think of imperialism, we think of the United Kingdom. Thank you very much. But some of the standards that evolved among scientists in Scotland and Ireland and England and Wales have shaped the world scientific community for hundreds of years. And they are, for the most part, I think, really good. It was curiosity about how the world works and a commitment to being truthful. Which is why if you can get a postdoctoral fellowship at Cambridge, that's a beautiful thing. It could also be Essex. I went to school in the United Kingdom for a year, at the University of Essex. By the way, all my colleagues and pals in Florida, they were so impressed. Goodman's going to England for a graduate degree. What a strange social mechanism. Where behind all of it is this interesting insecurity that even in Britain, they're a little insecure about themselves. They love being invited to give talks in the United States and Germany and France. It should give all of us around the world comfort that even though it seems to be a great country, it's got problems. And the point that you just made, Sean, is very important because it is now a global crisis. The history of science in China in my lifetime, maybe Dr. Kosei's too, he's not old enough yet, but China had no, well, I am so old. Go back even a quarter of a century, and you did not see what the kind of scientific community, culture, commitment that China is making now. China has changed the world. And sometimes it's changed it for the better. Sometimes in terms of what you're talking about, the student from China, American universities are, well, until Trump, were full of Chinese students for several reasons. One of which is China has become rich. And so if you came from Jordan to my university, they wouldn't charge you money. They would give you they would give you a fellowship to be a graduate student, and you would not have to pay money. If you're from China, you have money. So American universities have become dependent on Chinese money, not just American. This is true in Canada, United Kingdom, and elsewhere. And they have taught the same publication bias. All you need to do to advance your career is get your name on papers, not do good science, not make good discoveries, not do challenging experiments, just get your name on papers. In my opinion, it is one of the greatest deceptions in the history of civilization, and it comes from the world scientific community. Yes, Jude, you've been very patient.
I have a question actually.
Please.
Who's responsible to charge those websites? Like fake journals or something like this? Who's responsible to close this website or take an action?
Great question. What's your opinion?
I don't know actually. That's why I'm asking you. Maybe Shadin have an answer.
Yeah, Sean, or I think it's up to Dr. Kosei. We should give him a horse and a sword and send him into the world to fix these journals. It's
Yes.
part of this is a problem with the internet. It's free, it's open, and it is full of low quality websites, including websites that trick people. What's the mechanism for such a thing? Yes, Shannon.
Yes, Dr. Ken, I think that we as individuals, we shouldn't actually give responsibility to a certain institution because maybe the committee of a certain institution will be composed of good people and people who are like not very good or not very ethical. So I think we as individuals.
Everyone for every individual. That turns everybody into a detective. But I've spent a lot of time clicking on these links and looking at these journals. I am very often, and I think Dr. Kosei is too, asked to be on editorial boards and review papers for some of these journals. I actually, the link that Dr. Kosei shared earlier, if you click through that, you will see lots of advisory board members who are lecturers and assistant professors in countries in the developing world. Indonesia, for example. Why? Because as long as they can get away with it, those junior faculty are able to say, I'm on the editorial board of an international journal. even though it's a fake journal. It's that kind of exploitation that is a problem. So it could be individuals. It might be our institutions. I know if I can't get promoted anymore. You see, I'm too old. But if I wanted to get promoted, I would send them my CV, and people on the promotion committee would actually look at the journals and spend some time online to see, is this a credible journal? By the way, it used to be that impact factors, Sandra, 1 second, I appreciate your patience, that impact factors, which are attempts to measure the quality of a journal, can themselves be manipulated. That no sooner do we come up with a way to try and be rigorous with publication and authorship than somebody finds a way to hack it and make it corrupt. It's called index hacking, where the right
P-value.
the p-value. Well, p-hacking is actually within your own study. You can keep hacking that, but you can actually change. You can, by the way, some journals, the predatory journals, ask you to cite articles from the journal. The more articles in the world cite a journal, it improves that journal's ranking. You see the point. It's not just the journal saying, look how great we are. It's saying, here's independent validation because other people are citing the New England Journal of Medicine. But if the New England Journal of Medicine says, we won't publish your article unless you cite us, then it is corrupting its own ranking under the citation indexes. Yara and then Mohammed, please.
Okay, I just want first to apologize for not being present after my presentation, but a friend came to greet me like suddenly, so that's why I'm sorry. But I want to add something for this topic. I think with time, there will not be an importance for the publication as now, because now the AI generates texts that are like fully academic. So I mean, not in general, with the time, there will not be an importance for the publication and the citation and all of that in work-wise. This is how I view like the future with AI and with everything that's happening. So yeah.
Not a very good future, in other words.
Maybe it is, doctor, because maybe the importance now will be for like the real application, not the publication and the citation and the numbers. That that's maybe not very much useful at some point. I don't know.
A great discussion. We'll continue this later after our break and then next week. So thank you for that. Yes, Mohammed and then Saja.
I have a question about using AI in human medicine, clinical human medicine, and basic human medicine, and then public health. What is the challenges of using AI, and what's ethical concepts connected to this, and what's the benefits, and what's
This
the
will be the
limitation? What's the limitation, and is using AI passing an ethical check on ethical committee? And that's it.
That's good. That's good and important and very large topic. And we will begin to discuss this a little more formally after our break today.
Okay.
You've raised what part of what we have to do. And by the way, next week is our last session, so we don't have a lot of time left. And I'm going to try. If there are threads that are out there, we want to weave them all together now. Foundations and artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence is the greatest challenge, maybe the greatest opportunity in a very long time. It is changing everything, and it is doing it very, very quickly. And so that's including in clinical practice, in public health, and in biomedical research. And that's how we're going to pull all these threads together. Remember, there's 3 branching nodes from bioethics: clinical, research, public health. And they're connected in different ways. Anastomose. I love that. To anastomose a blood vessel or a bit of gut is where you make a connection between 2 things that didn't used to be connected. Is that right? That's a surgeon. That's what I learned from my surgeon friends. We're going to try and anastomose these various concepts between now and when we stop next week. So thank you for that. Stay tuned. Yes, Sasha, please.
I think that AI is not avoidable. So, يعني we can just use it wisely. يعني put يعني if there is if there are clear guidelines how to use it, and when I can use it and when I can't use it, then I think يعني we can't avoid using it. It just we must like wisely use it. Okay.
So suppose, and I think that something like that is a good, thoughtful position. Now what? In other words, I can tell you that as a teacher, and I'm sure Dr. Kosei is having the same question. What, in my case, since I'm really old, I've been doing this for a long time. What is it that I hope a student acquires, gets from, or learns from spending any time with me? What is the value of a university education if it turns out that AI is so effective and so reliable? Yeah, there are problems, and we're going to talk about everybody writes about concerns about AI, and you all should know what these concerns are. We'll talk about them later. But the large question is, if suddenly the tables were turned and students had to assess other students, what does it mean to learn something? What does it mean to learn how to be able to write well? Is writing well important? Why? Those are really large questions, and I am not sure what the right answers are. Why is writing important? My colleague, I think I mentioned to you in the Sean, one moment, in the concept of rigor and reproducibility. We have a manuscript that I'm working on now. If I ever get it published, I'll let you know. It's been rejected from several journals. The thesis is that reproducibility is affected by, in addition to the usual suspects, which might even include misconduct, reproducibility is affected, she argues, by bad writing, unclear writing. What we teach science students is that writing is not separate from doing science. Writing is an essential part of the scientific method, because if you're not able to take what's in your head and get it out of your head for somebody else to be able to understand, then your science is mysterious, it's mysticism. But then you look at the quality of writing of many scientific papers, and some of it is terrible. There's a literature on this. She's discovered that, and other people have too, there's a large literature on scientific writing. And one of the discoveries is a lot of it consists in hedging. Hedging is where I seem to be saying something, but leave myself a little wiggle room. In other words, I could argue, and there's a favorite example, in terms of statistical significance, of which you are all familiar. There's a famous paper in which somebody writes, there's a trend toward significance. That is, can I say BS? Is that an English locution that is understood without being vulgar? Either doesn't matter. It's nonsense. It's preposterous. It's deceptive. Either your statistics are significant or they are not. To say here it's looking good for us is not scientific. It's wishful thinking. And yet there have been published articles that tried to convince somebody because their results weren't that strong. The other thing that scientists do a lot, and I think Shannon had some of this in her presentation, is boastfulness. The language of positive results has increased. In one case, the use of the word innovative increased in the published literature more than 20,000 times over 2 decades, because scientists learned that editors like the word innovative. It's not that the science was new or novel or creative, but we learned to say that it was, because that's the way you get editors to accept your papers. Okay. So we've got a problem of broadening concern and corruption around the published, the literature. And then along comes artificial intelligence when you do not even need a human to contribute to it anymore. Yes, Shadin's hand is up.
Yes, Dr. Ken, I want to comment on why writing is important. So, in general, if we depend fully on an AI that produce 100% accurate results, for example, and we stopped doing basic things such as writing or reading or researching, we are actually destroying our nature, because if we get back to ourselves, we are as humans, we we are born to communicate our thoughts by writing, for example, by speaking. So we are destroying ourselves. That's why writing is important, not only in the scientific field to communicate our experiments, our observation, our interpretation of a certain result, but also in our lives.
Beautifully put. I have grave concern about, and look, students for years, I mean thousands of years, have found ways to find summaries, to write as little as possible, to wait till students very often hate writing. That's a problem with educational systems, I'm convinced. My thesis, and it's I think you supported it with your opinion, is that writing is not something extra that we do. In the laboratory, someone said, go write up the results. That's the wrong view of writing. If you're a good scientist, you will be a good writer. Put the other way, if you're not a good writer, because in writing, you're having to organize your thoughts critically. It's exactly what scientists do. And the greatest scientists, I would argue, are the greatest writers. We have so many scientists, however, that a lot of us are not very good writers, and the literature is full of bad writing. And that's the point that she makes. So writing well and more clearly will improve reproducibility. My contribution was writing code better. Writing prose and writing code can improve reproducibility. I think it's an interesting thesis. It's an article which you get to write when you're old, and you write it because it's fun to write and you think it's an interesting idea. Yes, Shadin again, please.
Yeah, Dr. Ken, if you allow me to add, I figured it out from writing my manuscript for my project. So I was just writing the results, like without any interpretation, and I was looking at the certain result, and I was thinking, okay, why you didn't connect it? Why you didn't produce a guideline or a recommendation for other researcher to be ethical? Why you didn't use that result for guiding others? Why did you report it without actually using it? So that's one of the important things.
One of the well, once again, really good point. When you become confident, you're able to be a little more self-critical, and that's good. The temptations that we face are, well, the temptations, if you're a scientist, not that anyone here would do it, to make up results means you don't have to do the experiment. If I can just sort of say, here's a plot of data, I've saved a lot of trouble. Experiments are messy, they don't work, the machines break, the balances are not accurate, there's a power failure, all kinds of things go wrong. I'm just going to make up my results. Or I did the real experiment, and now I'm going to hand my data over to a computer program, which I do not understand. Unless anybody here writes code for artificial intelligence, you don't understand how these programs work, do you? But you're going to put your life, your career, your reputation in its hands and say, give me 2,000 words of analysis of these data. Include a method section, a conclusion, and a bunch of appropriate references, none of which I have ever read. And you will get a beautiful article. Normally, here's an example of how we're all a little bit corrupt. I once submitted an article where a criticism was made about, I should have had more references to make this point. I said, no, I don't need more references. It's my opinion and I'm right. I said, no, you need more references. Okay. So I did more research and I looked up more references. The question for you all is, how well should I know the references that I am citing? Should I have read every article that is in my bibliography? Should I be able to explain every article that I am citing? Farah and then Shadan again. Farah, I'm gonna give Farah.
At least we should read the abstract and the conclusion.
Why?
So if anyone asks us if this is a good reference to our thesis or our theory, we can defend our use of this reference.
What if they don't ask?
To me, it's my duty as a scientist.
I want you all to feel a little uncomfortable now with me. Real discomfort. I'm a philosopher who writes about bioethics, which means sometimes I also used to work in an artificial intelligence laboratory at Carnegie Mellon University many years ago. I worked in the Center for Machine Translation. I think I mentioned this to you. An artificial intelligence laboratory where we translated the different sorts of things, but we did a lot of Japanese translation. That was before there were large language models. In fact, the model that we used then was completely different. It was based on knowledge. In other words, it wasn't predicting from the literature what the next word's going to be. It's Here's what we know about the world, and hence how we can make predictions from it. There's several different kinds of artificial intelligence. The kind that I worked in was ancient, right? It's not as fast. You had to model the whole world. There was what they called an ontology. So one of the domains that we translated in was the doctor-patient relationship. So Dr. Mohammed, have you ever had a patient who you were not able to communicate with because of a different language? Imagine, and they have this now, they're apps for your phone. I speak into the phone, it speaks to you in your language.
I think communication skills and it's a must to be used in you must elucidate what do you mean to the patient. Each sentence
Is crucial. It's one
Yes.
in the context of clinical ethics, which applies more to you than some other colleagues, although pharmacists have direct relationships too. You have a relationship with an individual human being who is sick, and that entails great responsibility. Communication, as you point out, is very important. We're now asking, what about artificial intelligence to help us with communication? In my hospital, they now have artificial intelligence programs that will write messages to patients. Not doctors, computers. They're well written. They don't make any grammatical mistakes. And it takes 2 seconds. And you ask most doctors around the world, what is their greatest challenge? It's all the documentation and how long it takes to write up the case. Am I right? Mohammed, go ahead.
I think it's the EPIC system in the hospitals of the USA. Uh, Typing the complaint of the patient and symptoms and signs in a few seconds, despite of 20 minutes it's take.
It's well, Epic and also Cerner and many of the others. I've actually worked in several electronic health records. Most of them are not very good for what it's worth. And they shape the way patient care, how people communicate with patients. Let's hold that thought. But you've confirmed one of the points that I wanted to make. Before our break, I would like to have Jude, Saja, and that's all for now. So Jude, the floor is yours.
Actually, I want to answer the question why reading is very important before. So, if you wanted to follow the research steps, we should read the literature before we start writing to get the idea and to understand the topic very well. So that's why I think reading is very important on research.
Also beautifully put. That some of the standards that you all have learned about actually matter and actually work, and they imbue you with intellectual honesty. What I've found is how quickly some of my colleagues are prepared to say, I don't care about that. I've gotten more papers published. And my reputation, by the way, is okay because all of my colleagues are doing it. It's the school child's excuse. Everyone's doing it. But I find that to be erosive, corrupt, and dispiriting. Yes, Saja.
It is regarding references. If we should like read each article, then cite it. I just read about from يعني retraction watch. I read about citation falsification, that there are or there were many articles have been retracted related because of citation falsification, which is يعني like that those or these papers or articles were stuffed with hundreds of irrelevant citation to artificially boost يعني to just يعني increase the strength of the article. They put يعني citation with that يعني false citation, which is a stuffing. Yeah, that's it.
Well, and in fact, as you know, it's also one of the first things people identify that artificial intelligence does. They call it hallucination or confabulation, where artificial intelligence programs will make up references. And a number of people, in a number of scientists have discovered this. In some jurisdictions, lawyers discovered it, that it made up fake cases. So that kind of imagination, if you will, is a problem. And it's a problem for our collective credibility. Now, what before the break though, we're talking, once again, we're trying to weave some threads together. One, the aspect of our, for argument's sake, three main sources of moral knowledge. There could be more, but we're confined the way we are. The deontology, utilitarianism, scripture, and the four principles approach, because so many know it so well. And applying that to clinical practice, to public health, and to research. Because publication and authorship are so important, and because the way we communicate about what works in clinical practice, what works in public health, and what we've discovered in biomedical research is that somehow or other this communication ends up being really important. And we humans have found ways to cheat and take shortcuts. And now we have machines to do it for us. Is writing important or not? If writing is not important, then it doesn't matter whether I write it or a machine writes it. If writing is important, why? What do we lose if humans don't read and write anymore? You will see, we're already seeing this in some fields, if all I need to do is push a button, and all I need to do is push a button. And my favorite artificial intelligence program, by the way, as I've commended to you, I'm going to tell you the ones I have. Where's my directory here? Where do I put my artificial intelligence? No, it's not there. Bear with me just a moment. I saved them all here. Wrong screen. Okay. Maybe it's over here. So with that, and we'll go to documents, and we'll go to informatics, and we'll go to AI, and so here I have one of them on my desktop. So I have here Claude, I have Chat GPT, I have Copilot, and I hope you all do exactly the same thing. Not to use it necessarily, but to learn how it works. That you will be more powerful if you know what works with it and what doesn't work with it. Some professors said, no artificial intelligence in my class. For our purposes, we don't want you to use it to write, because if you use it to write, then it's not clear that you've learned anything. What would you want to be evaluated on? Do you really want to be evaluated by whether or not you're able to write a clever prompt for a robot? Yes, Saja, and then we need to take a break.
I think if we don't read or write anymore, then simply we will not use our minds. So it is boring, and I think it is it has this problem has harmful effects on our minds, in our life, because we will not use our minds. We can't create, we can't discover. We just will depend on machines like AI to produce or discover.
Is that bad? In other words, what if someone says, okay, but I've got a lot of time now to look at videos on TikTok. I can spend all my time now being entertained. That's what I want to do at the end of the day, is be entertained. I want to watch young people from around the world do funny dances on TikTok while cooking something interesting.
Dr. Ken, I
I-
think,
I'm entertained.
okay,
Keep
I
going, keep
think
going.
يعني okay, using reading or articles or learning new skills يعني especially writing or reading, we just practice our minds, يعني ourselves in our brain, okay? Then without these habits or without this يعني reading or writing, then our cells in our mind will be dead. Then
That's called brain rot.
yeah,
Right.
brain death. Not a brain death, no, but
Well, Basant's identified it. But once again, to keep asking why questions. If I have a roof and I have food and I'm entertained, what does it matter whether I can write anymore or critically analyze
Dr.
data?
Ken,
Yes.
I wanna answer that, please. Actually,
And
what
then we will
happened?
close.
Yeah, what
Go
happened about academic entertainment? What happened about productivity, for example? These things can entertain us, actually. Not only entertaining by TikTok will give us like dopamine, maybe other things like accomplishing things in academia or in research will give us a more good feeling.
I love it. Wonderful idea. Get us so that we're critic. The dopamine, by the way, next time you're in public, you've already done this. Look at the number of people who are looking at a screen. It's everywhere. It's the world. Are they being creative or are they getting a dopamine reaction? And maybe it's a little of both. Those are great comments. We will resume in 30 minutes. Is that okay, Dr. Kosei?
Yeah, for sure. 48. Is it? Yeah, 48. Not to waste any minute for you.
48 minutes, 48 after the hour. See you soon.
Yes.
Thank you. Time is of the essence, and so we should make the most of every minute.
Yes.
This is true the older you get, by the way. There's no way to explain it to them.
Yeah.
One of the names I mentioned parenthetically that's used to describe, pardon me, responsible research is research integrity. How would you say integrity in Arabic?
I think this is the same word, maybe. Is it related to rigor, for example, or something like that?
Well, no, more real personal integrity. So, for example,
No,
if I
it's nazaha, if it works. Is it okay, guys? Is it nazaha? Is it okay?
To be honest, to be truthful, to be transparent, to
Yes,
yeah.
I think it's nazaha called.
Yeah. And you can drive a car with integrity. You can feed a child with integrity. You can write a paper with integrity or not, right? And what we've seen in the predatory journals make it clear is that millions of people are prepared to say, I don't care about integrity. I just want more papers on my CV. Because that is the currency. People do that with money all the time, right? Behavior you would never, ever use in the real world with ordinary interactions become acceptable if you can make a little more money doing it or lose a little less money doing it, right? That's international finance. It's how do you do these deals, these billions of euro deals? Well, in any case, but the concept of integrity is important, and it's one that you adopt internally. No, I mean, sometimes people will say of someone, oh, she's practiced with integrity for many years. Well, people who know her have observed her, that's entirely possible. But ultimately, it's what you know in your heart. Here's how I've lived. Here are the corners I've cut. The cut a corner, is to, that's an English idiom, is instead of going to the edge and turning left, it's sort of going like this. Save a little time, round it off at the edges, right? We all do that a little bit, don't we? We all do it. No one's that pure. I used to do it when driving. And now that I get old, I drive very conservatively. I stop when I'm supposed to stop. I don't go over the speed limit because I'm not in a hurry anymore. Uh, and I don't feel virtuous about it. It's not that important to me anymore. Some of that may come with old age or wisdom. I'm not sure I have any wisdom, but you get the point that how would you explain what you do to your children, to your mother? There was a very important criticism. This is a foundation we've not spent any time on, but I want to mention it in passing. We've talked in detail about utilitarianism, deontology, religious sources. We've mentioned the four principles approach. A fifth one is due to a colleague, a philosopher who died a few years ago, Bernard Gert, G-E-R-T, who knew Tom Beecham. They were colleagues, they were very respectful colleagues, and they disagreed with each other their entire professional lives. That is a beautiful thing. They got together, they embraced, but they wrote articles saying the other was wrong all the time. It was a beautiful bit of scholarship where I can disagree with you respectfully. That was the tradition in the sciences. It's not if you disagree with me, you're an idiot. It's if you disagree with me, let's have an exchange about it. And that is something that I fear is too often lost, where too often disagreement is seen to be disrespect. And that, I think, is false. In any case, Bernard Gert argued that the four principles approach are really good for labeling problems or naming problems. Well, Farmer says that's a tension between autonomy and beneficence. What are you going to do about it? He said, but they don't help you solve the problem very well. So he argued. He had a different system of moral rules that he summarized in the following way. If you're contemplating an action and trying to decide whether it is right or wrong, or good or bad, or blameworthy or praiseworthy, would you advocate it in public to someone you care about? In other words, would you say on television, on a television studio, in a chair next to your mother, Mom, it's okay to use Chat GPT to get better rankings for your recipe club, your Quran study group, your dance, whatever it is you're doing. It's okay to use Chat GPT. No one will notice, Mom. Would you do that in public to someone you care about? If you would not, then probably you should not do it. His view is that morality is a public system. It has evolved among humans to try and capture certain overarching duties and values. It's a little bit utilitarian, a little bit Kantian, and Gert thought of himself as bridging these two things. He also is very famous for he wrote an article once about so in the United States, some very conservative Christians will say, the only moral code I need is the 10 Commandments. And they would have them put on courthouse walls. And what Gert discovered was, first of all, most people don't know the 10 Commandments. But the one that he liked the best was the commandment from Moses to the ancient Israelites. Honor the Sabbath, and on the Sabbath give your manservant and maidservant the holiday off work. What's a manservant? That's an English translation for slave. And he says, give your slave the Sabbath off is not a very good moral code because there shouldn't be any slaves in the first place. So you see people as depending on scripture and depending on things. In any case, Gert was a wonderful philosopher, and he's dead. But he disagreed very respectfully with Tom Beecham, the author of the main author of the Four Principles approach. Okay. These concepts, including that of integrity, matter a lot in research. They matter a lot in clinical practice. Right? If you're a physician, or you're a nurse, or you're a pharmacist, and you have patients, a course in simple clinical ethics would talk about them being vulnerable, how you have an ancient tradition and a duty to take care of them, ahead of other interests, including your own benefit. Okay, and we see this in traditions around the world. Okay. When ChatGPT first came out, my thought was, this is really interesting. What writing do nurses, pharmacists, and physicians do that's really bad writing? And the answer is, Dr. Muhammad, whether it's an Epic or Cerner or Meditech or any of the other electronic health records, it's notes that are full of copied and pasted passages. Here's what the doctor on call yesterday wrote. I'm just going to copy that. It's Control C, no, Control A for select all, Control C for copy, and Control V for paste. And I would see notes. I'm a philosopher, remember. I am not licensed to practice anything. I have no official status other than my university appointment. And yet here I find myself as the director of the ethics service for a very, very large hospital. The big public hospital in Miami, the big county hospital, Jackson Memorial Hospital, which includes among its mission providing health care for people who are poor. And to this day, it's a problem, and it has financial problems, and it's dealing with Trump and all that silliness. But if you need a kidney transplant and you have no money, you will get one at this hospital. In other words, it's an attempt by civil society to ensure that all the tax money that was used on medical education and nursing education and pharmacy education, all the tax money that was used for biomedical research so that everybody would be able to learn something and have a career, all the tax money that was used for public health and how it affects clinical practice and research, et cetera, produces a moral obligation to make it clear that our hospitals are not about our professional careers, much as many of us would like them to be that. What a great cardiologist he is. Oh, he's a wonderful transplant surgeon. This person, she's a nephrologist who really knows kidneys, all of which is true. And all of those people have a duty, I would argue, to ensure they spend time taking care of poor people. Now, that's a debate we can have in another class, but you see the point. There might be a debate there. But my thought about ChatGPT was they don't like doing the writing. The writing is not very useful to people who read it later. I know this because I'm reading it later. I would find myself doing what you do. When you read something and you don't understand it, I'd look it up. And then I found myself asking colleagues who are physicians if they knew certain terms from specialties that were not their own. In other words, give a pediatrician a gastroenterology concept. Give a colleague in cardiology a very complex concept in orthopedic surgery. Give a nephrologist information about neurology. And they don't understand either. So a lot of this is performative. The medical record, which is supposed to keep a record of why I'm your patient, what you've done to me, whether it worked or not, and to guide other people in taking care of me, became corrupted. In my jurisdiction, and Dr. Muhammad is right here, the electronic health record did not evolve to help take better care of patients. It evolved because we need to send a bill to somebody. Someone needs to pay money for healthcare. It might be the government, it might be an insurance company. And so the electronic health record evolved as a way to document what you did so you could get paid, not a way to document what you did so others can take care of you. And that's produced a major problem in my country's medical system. Would it be an idea, I asked myself, if all of these really badly written medical notes, progress notes, consultation reports, and so forth, were at least edited by artificial intelligence? What would be an argument, and I'm going to ask you all to give me a few examples. What is an argument in favor, a practical argument in favor of allowing AI to write clinical notes? And then I'm going to ask you for arguments against using artificial intelligence to write or edit clinical notes. Okay, what's a good reason? Please, Mohammed.
I think saving time, and then allowing the physician to see a lot of patients, and spelling issues.
Okay. Two
Some
powerful
physicians-
arguments.
Some physicians making clinical notes, especially occupational English, using some mistakes in the spelling. So AI can avoid this mistakes with spelling.
Very good arguments. Thank you for that. Dalia.
Yes, Doctor. As Dr. Muhammad said, that it's very good in time saving. So AI can draft notes quickly and focus on patient care. And also, I think AI can help to ensure all the standard data points like history, medication. So you will be sure that everything will be documented. But the disadvantage, in my opinion, that AI may create error, and then it will be like, who's responsible if the AI generates the notes and there was a mistake? So this is who will take the responsibility, the clinician or the physician or the software? That's it.
Very good. Excellent points. Other thoughts? For and against. Dr. Mohammed.
I will talk about the accountability on medical notes. The physician still has to submit what AI clinical notes taking. So he will check what AI typing, then submit what AI in the patient file.
In other words,
So
go ahead.
so the accountability to the physician.
That's a very good and standard answer. It what basically says that in most of our hospitals, the physician is the captain of the team. He or she needs to take responsibility no matter what tools are used. So if you use AI, that's an obligation to be able to review the AI tool you used. Right? Very good point, Mohammed. Yes, very good points. Jude, please. No, sorry, Yara, and then Jude. I'm out of order.
Okay, Doctor, I think for sure I am with AI because we can't stop it. It's something we need to face, and we can't say like there will be regulation or something because even if that's the case, it needs a lot of time for it to really like be regulated by the authorities. So I think what we should do is that, as I mentioned before, I think the publications and all of that by the authors, I don't think there will be like importance for it. I think we should focus on the applications and we should use AI to get the most benefits out of it because it's very smart. It's maybe smarter than Einstein. I don't know, like it can like go and be like this. So we need to use it in order to apply it in the best way. So yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you very much for that, Yara. Yes, Jude, please.
I worked in a project 1 year ago with the computer engineering students. We developed a tool to help diagnose pneumothorax. It's a lung disease by chest X-ray. So before we do the project, we ask physicians if this tool will help them or not. So my job was here to label a huge data of chest X-rays, and we develop a model. So I think it's really helpful for them because this type of disease, it's very hard to detect on chest X-ray. So it helped them to detect if the pneumothorax it's right or left. Then of course the physician will investigate more, not rely only on in our tool.
And how did it go? Did you learn anything?
We sent the paper for publication, but we are waiting right now.
What did you learn anything?
From the project?
Yeah.
Yes, because I labeled maybe more than 100 chest X-ray photo, so it helped me.
You know, one of the first uses in, as you know, I'll pause a moment. There are a lot of hands up, and that's very, but I want to make a distinction that might help you. Large language models, including all the ones you know best now, are they were released in the ChatGPT is actually it's exact November, so it's just of 2022, 23, 24, 25. It's been 3 years of large language models, and the world has changed dramatically. Before that time, there was a lot of artificial intelligence being used in medicine. It was being used especially in the medical specialties that are thought to be very visual. So, pathology, radiology, dermatology, ophthalmology, where imaging matters. And radiology was the leader of all of these. I had there are collections of tuberculosis images that people were using artificial intelligence pattern matching software, not large language models, but the kind that would see it, they would do pixel analysis and say, this is what a lesion looks like. Here's a tuberculosis lesion, or here's a melanoma lesion, or here is the cytopathology for any kind of, from blood or from anything else, right? They were looking at images, and more reliably and more accurately than humans, would I be able to identify, was it bronchiectasis? Was it, or pleural effusion? What were you studying?
Pneumothorax.
Pneumothorax, right? Well, if there's enough pneumo, it's easy to detect that, right? But the larger point, of course, is what if a machine does it more reliably than you do? Now, this predates the large language models. And as some of us were, there was a debate, it was a history of artificial intelligence exchange on one of the lists that I'm on. And the term artificial intelligence was first used in 1956 at a conference at Dartmouth College in New Hampshire. A guy named McCarthy coined the phrase. And since then, of course, it's been lots of different science, ultimately very complex computer science debates about inference. We love our algorithms. An algorithm, remember, is a sort of an if-then sentence. If I throw, where's my pen? If I throw my pen, then it will be over there. If I drop my pen, then it will fall. If I eat, then I will. In other words, you can make it as simple as you want. If then, that is an algorithm. And we love our algorithms. Dr. Mohammed will tell you about how many physicians love what they call clinical pearls. If you see this, then it's going to be that. My favorite example of this are signs and symptoms. I recently saw a statue to the French poet de Musset. De Musset was he's a French poet, but he's famous in medicine because of his aortic insufficiency. When you have aortic insufficiency, you very often nod your head like this with your pulse. That is called de Musset's sign. Many physicians don't know it. I had a friend of mine who was a historian of medicine. He loved examples like that. I wouldn't know it. But I can tell you now, if you're in the clinic and you see a patient doing this, then if you see this, then you diagnose aortic insufficiency. What a machine does is it builds a very big database, or it steals it from other people, which is what the current large language models do now, and does all of those inferences really fast. I asked I like blue cheese. I was away for several weeks, as you know. And before I left, I put an open container of blue cheese in the freezer to do an experiment to determine whether or not one can safely freeze blue cheese, which has its flavor because of a mold. I mean, it's like many cheeses, it's okay. So I'm back now. I've got this beautiful cheese, and I'm wondering, is it safe to eat? And I asked ChatGPT, and it said yes. It will have changed its fabric, its consistency, but it won't make you sick. Should I trust it? I'm going to, so I can report to you next week what happened. If I'm not there next week, it means the blue cheese had gone bad and I've died. But let's hope for the best. The point is, artificial intelligence in one form or another has been around for a very long time. It wasn't any good until last 10 years or so in terms of the pattern recognition, the ability to do analysis of pixels. As Dr. Mohammed and Jose will tell you, pathology is an extraordinary specialty. How you read a slide and look at a slide and be able to say, there's no lesion, there's no human, all you have are, they're beautiful, but they're pictures of a bunch of cells. And I look at it and I can't tell anything about it. A pathologist will look at it and she will tell you, this patient is going to die. Then came the large language models, which did for words what the other programs were doing for pictures. If you have the entire internet to train your algorithm on, then you will be able to improve medical notes, scientific submissions, newspaper articles, term papers, laundry lists, anything. And in a breathtakingly short time, we now find ourselves in the world of bioethics, including clinical ethics, research ethics, and public health ethics. Remember, I want you to be able to say what the difference is among these three. Okay. Has changed the curriculum in bioethics. I don't remember the first time we did this course, Dr. Close, it was AI wasn't on. It was. Well, I can't remember now, but there was no AI. We talked a little bit about it. It has changed everything, not just the ethics curriculum. It's in the ethics curriculum now because it is everywhere else in medical practice, pharmacy practice, nursing practice, research, in public health, and so on and so forth. It is everywhere. Now, the first responses in universities, where we teach people scientific method, how to write, that sort of thing, was the belief that if you used a robot to write a paper, you would not learn the material. And students would boast about how they submitted papers that took literally, they put in a clever query, 5 seconds later, they had a term paper. They neither read it nor did they understand it, but they submitted it and they got a good grade. So universities are thinking this is a problem. Yes, Dr. Mohammed.
I have a question. The USA is the only legalized officially using AI in clinical medicine. How can we distinguish between legal official using of AI and unofficial using of AI applications and systems, and what is the foundations we can depend on to distinguish between official and non-official, and how can we make the application of AI official on the concept of medical ethics and biomedical ethics.
You will forgive me for suggesting that there's a good paper in that. So thank you for volunteering to write that paper. I knew you would rise to the occasion. So there is I spent a lot of time tracking artificial intelligence guideline. In fact, it's changed a little bit. I've sent you the link before. It's an online list of guidance documents, guidance from professional societies, from governments, from individual institutions, from academic places, from NGOs of various kinds, and there are not many laws. In the United States, it's very peculiar because well, the United States is complicated. So remember the history of the United States. It's 50 little countries, and there's some national laws and there's state laws. What a lot of the states wanted to do was not wait for Washington, especially because Washington is being governed by extremist, corrupt psychopaths. Oh, I wish I were joking. And Trump's latest executive order, because he thinks he's an emperor, is states are not allowed to do that. It has to be the federal government that does that. Which might be okay if it were a different government, but that's another story. Your question, Dr. Mohammed, is a great question. What should the rules be? How should they be enforced? By whom? And with what consequences? That is the question that is now shaping every debate about artificial intelligence, and one that the bioethics community is now embracing. Okay, so let me begin to answer your question a little bit. This is my reading and a synthesis from the literature, and I will end with it with a challenge to you, not just to you, to everybody in the class. Okay. The guidance, the standards, the recommendations have tended to address problems and concerns with AI being reliable and accurate. One of them is not that. One of them is privacy. So I mention it first. How is the AI system in your hospital going to help you write the note or generate a diagnosis or differential diagnoses or a treatment plan? Okay. Remember, what we teach in medical school is because we believed that the ability to recognize signs and symptoms, the clinical examination, is it the same in Jordan? One of the problems in the United States is that young physicians order too many tests. They don't know how to do a good physical exam. They don't know basic, simple lab tests. Everything is an MRI, right? And what we started to do was to say, learn the foundations of medicine, learn the biology, learn the signs and symptoms. And with that, we would say to our students, without any laboratory tests at all, you can diagnose 70 to 80% of the cases you will see. You don't need a lab test. You need to know your patient. You need to communicate well with your patient. Your patient needs to trust you to tell you the truth. By the way, has anybody in this room ever lied to their doctor? several times, by the way, once involving when I smoked cigarettes, which I no longer do, and once involving diet, which I still do. Anyway, I still try and eat better and reduce the amount. I would be healthier if I lost a few pounds, shall we say. And that may be true for, but I always tell him how well I exercise. Okay. That goes to your point earlier, Dr. Mohammed, about communication and trust. But it also matters in terms of what's in the medical record. Is the artificial intelligence program to render so suppose Dr. Kosei is your patient, Dr. Mohammed, and he's told you the truth about everything. And you type it all in and hit the enter key saying to the robot, what's the diagnosis? What is the robot looking at? Just him? No. It's looking at other patients and other outcomes and other electronic health records, including maybe mine. When it's looking at mine, is there a privacy issue? It doesn't know it's me, Ken, but it's still my information. Should I be asked as a patient whether or not it's permissible for the institution to include my comprehensive electronic health record, which goes back a long time, to help you with your diagnoses? Go ahead. Dr. Mohammed?
We're talking about ethics and medical ethics and philosophy of bioethics. And these concepts, we have to use the AI in ethical concept. So in the Middle East, we using AI without official permission. So it's we can't ethically we should not use AI.
I would argue, well, or to rephrase that for you, we should not use, and to make it part of all other clinical tools, we should not use tools that have not been clinically validated.
Yes.
That should be uncontroversial, right?
Yes.
Okay, who does the validation? Who should do the validation?
I think USA.
I'm not sure you want that, pal. Whatever. See, there's an interesting problem because of some countries, their products are everywhere. Epic, you know about Epic, but Epic,
Yes,
Cerner is sold around the world. Epic is available around the world. Others are all, but they suffer the same problems, right? They're based on the same kernels and the same difficulty in managing what doctors, nurses, and pharmacists need. That's it. But you see, the tools of bioethics would be, you should not use the bioethics answer to why are you right? Why should there be some sort of supporting analysis before you use a new tool, is because we've required this in clinical practice for hundreds of years. If you're going to use a tool, I actually have a stethoscope in my closet, because sometimes, by the way, y'all probably have stethoscopes. I'm a philosopher, so it's very atavistic and omphallocentric. It's like navel gazing, right? But listen to your own heart. It's a wonderful experience. Listen to your own bowel sounds. Listen to your own respiration, right? It's a beautiful thing. My stethoscope is a very old one. It was given to me by a friend's mother who was a nurse 40 years ago. It's not a very good one. We humans invented auscultation because it made it easier to listen to sounds of the heart and make diagnoses. Do you know the history of the first cardiologic auscultation? It was a physician who put his ear on his patient's chest and heard things that were amazing. You can actually hear arrhythmias. You can actually hear, what do you call it, the bruit. You can actually hear different forms of gush. You can detect valve problems by listening carefully. There's a problem with that, of course, for half the population in the world, because all the physicians were men, and there were concerns about modesty for putting your ear on a female patient's chest. So they invented these horns, like the earliest loudspeakers. It was very narrow at one end, and it was a tube that went to something like this. And then you could put just the tip of it on the chest and listen a meter away at the heart sounds. Those were the first stethoscopes. They weren't regulated. They weren't approved. Doctors just started using them, to the point where if your doctor was not using one, and this is going to be a very important point, there was concern that you might not be practicing up to the current standard, even though the tool, stethoscope, was not formally approved. That's an interesting problem, especially when we apply it now to artificial intelligence. The first issue is privacy, namely, are you using my information and do you need my permission to do that? Maybe you don't need my information if it's anonymous, because we've been studying medical records for a very long time without permission. We do this at Morning Report. We talk about cases all the time to learn from them. The history of the medical journal is the history of shared case reports so that physicians could learn from each other. The first case reports were published in the former Proceedings of Massachusetts General Hospital, which later was taken over by some medical society in New England. And over 40 years, they changed the name to the New England Journal of Medicine. It began with case reports to teach doctors, and they collected them informally. Ancient Persian, ancient Arabic, ancient Greek, ancient Jewish, ancient Chinese physicians all learned by sharing with each other. Okay, without consent from the patients. Now it's a little different, and I present it to you as an ongoing challenge. And the first issue with artificial intelligence in medicine, namely, do we have adequate privacy protections in place, and who should be responsible for them? It's about responsibility and accountability, as you all have already pointed out. Second, we've already mentioned this, AI makes mistakes. It makes, the terms are in dispute, but they call them hallucinations or sometimes confabulation. To confabulate is to mix up and become confused. Right? AI does this. Similar question. If you're going to use this tool, who's responsible for ensuring that it is not making a mistake? Now, that can either be for writing the hospital note or the progress note or the consultant's note, or the use of these tools to generate diagnoses and differential diagnoses. Same question. Yes, Ruba.
Yes, doctor. I think that who bear the responsibility of AI mistakes is the clinician, him or herself, because that AI is just a tool. He cannot make judgment. The clinical judgment يعني cannot replace يعني completely replace a clinician rule in a clinical setting. So I think that it's just a tool that can help a clinician to process things, but doesn't replace clinical judgment. And who bear the responsibility to answer your question, doctor, is I think the clinician, because it's I shouldn't replace clinician rule in clinical practice.
Okay. So therefore, now now we have a bit of a conflict, because earlier Dr. Muhammad said that one of the virtues, he said correctly, that one of the virtues of using these tools is that it saves time. And now you're telling me and Dr. Muhammad and everybody else that now you can use it, but you've got to assess its reliability. So much for all the time that it saves, because now, in order to use the tool that saved time, I have to spend time assessing the tool. Which is not a bad suggestion, but it does take away some of the benefit. A lot of people, though, with you, would argue, would agree that clinicians, the person, the nurse, the pharmacist, the physician who is caring for the patient has to have some responsibility for the tools they use. So we've got a problem now, a practical tension problem, an ethics one. We can assign responsibility, all you ethics professors out there, can say it's your job, it's your job, it's your job. But we also actually need to make it possible for them to do it. Yes, Saja.
I would say that we can use AI, but not يعني in all stages, because simply AI cannot make like a physical examination. Like only human can make physical examination to distinguish between like abdominal pain. Abdominal pain, the doctor must make physical examination to detect the correct area or the correct source of pain. AI cannot make that. Okay. Also, I would say that AI is databases that we already created it. Okay, so so we can use it, but not in all stages of healthcare providing.
Saja, you give a very good example of an interesting clinical problem, which our colleagues in the hospital and surgery would call an acute abdomen. Namely, the patient who shows up and it really hurts a lot somewhere in here. Is it appendicitis? Is it something else with the GI system? Is it cardiovascular? I once took a friend to the emergency department because he's having really, really bad abdominal pains, and they worked him up for a heart attack. No, it was gastrointestinal. The workup was done by humans. If you have an acute abdomen, and it is, for example, appendicitis, sooner or later, someone needs to discover that and cut your patient open and fix it. Otherwise, your patient is going to die. Now, as Saja said, computers can't do that. No, but robots can. First of all, are you getting lab values? Is there increased in white blood cells? That might be a sign of appendicitis. Where exactly, what quadrant is it? The robot can ask you, where does it hurt? Left, right, higher, lower? Put my robot finger on your belly and move it. By the way, it is worth noting that a number of governments have been exploring the use of what they call, of remote presence surgery where the surgeon is in one room working the tools, but the patient and the robot are in another city. They've done in veterinary medicine, they've done several experiments like this, and they're starting to work on others. There's also once, it was the military and NASA. They wanted to build what they called a battlefield stretcher. What's that? It means if you're a soldier and you're injured and you're lying on the ground, your mates put you on the stretcher, and the stretcher is this electronic device that can put in a line, a robot putting a line into a vein. It's going to be able to take your temperature. It's going to be able to draw blood from the line that it put, as well as administer drugs to it. So if you can draw blood, then you can do a vital, lab analysis and administer drugs, all without a human being present. Some of it driven by artificial intelligence. There's a debate about the limits of the technology. Your point, Sajid, is a very important one. There are a couple of hands up. I want to respect them. Farah and then Dania.
Dr. Ken, is it right to summarize this interaction with we can't tiptoe around AI, but we have to live with its dual use? There's a use and there's a misuse, and we have to live with it.
Are you happy with that conclusion?
Yes.
Because having to live, I think what you mean, tell me if I'm not right. We have to live with, we're better for living with it as long as it is appropriately used.
Yes.
Okay. In other words, the point I made earlier about certain tools and how it can be blameworthy not to use a tool matters a lot for artificial intelligence.
It's
Because
like I was going to say it's like the precautionary principle.
Not very similar. In other words, what if you find, after a lot of research, that artificial intelligence consistently gives you more accurate diagnoses? Then if you're my doctor,
sorry.
Go ahead.
It should be implanted more. If it's good, it should be implanted more in our care system.
But the ethics argument is if it's good, you ought to be using it because you get better outcomes. That becomes an ethical imperative for a machine that we're all worried a lot about. And that, I think, is a very exciting problem to have. These are conversations which I've not had with earlier students. I mean, this is changing in real time in fundamental ways. That question, ought you to use a tool you do not understand because the evidence is it's accurate more often than you are? And that's where we are now. And you raised a very important point, Farah. Thank you for that. Yes, Dania and then Ruba.
Yes, doctor. Regarding that, I think that we can't rely on everything in the healthcare, in the AI, because sometimes we have to take more than one opinion from the doctors to make a conclusion or to make a diagnosis. And last lectures we talked with the Dr. Kusai about the AI snake oil. That when when we rely too much on the AI and without scientific evidence or validation. So basically, in the healthcare, we are dealing with the people. So we can't rely just on the AI. We need experience. We need more than opinion.
That sounds like really good advice. What's your estimation of how well likely to do that, given what we've already seen when people have these? That's my daughter. That's Allison. She's a postdoc in California. I spend all day looking at this thing. One, did she text me? No. Did my friend text me? No. What's the latest email? And then very important uses like so I'm playing a card game, you see solitaire between meetings, or in a very boring class or Zoom, which is why we don't like students to bring these to class because they're not taking notes. They're looking at TikTok. In other words, we knew that about learning in the first place. And in the academy now and in universities, what is the appropriate use? And who's an appropriate user of the technology? I want you all to write that down if you haven't done it already. Appropriate uses and appropriate users. Because I believe that's a synthesis that I learned from some of my mentors going back to the 1980s when they were writing about computers in medicine when artificial intelligence was no good. A very large database. I want you to imagine a very large database. And that database is a relational database. You have one on your computer. It's called Microsoft, whatever it is, Access, I think. If you've never created a database, I recommend that you do. A lot of people who are doing science, who are doing empirical studies, will create a database. The fields are, suppose there are 100 patients. There's random numbers, starting with 1014 and going to 1114. No unique identifier, not Ken Goodman, not his address, not his social security number, not his IP address, just 10172. That's across like this, right? That's the row. The column, age, including birth date, blood pressure, medical history. Let's pretend we're studying, Dr. Muhammad, my hypertension. So you're going to see some blood pressure readings. And by the way, you can see them over time. No artificial intelligence. You can do this. This is they've had these programs for half a century, more. They're very simple. Any child can build one. Now you have 100 patients from your trial and you start noticing patterns. That patients of a certain age, a certain weight, and a certain diet are more likely to have hypertension. Is that true, by the way? That weight and diet and exercise affect hypertension? Just give me a thumbs up, Mohammed. That they do. So you've learned something. If you didn't know anything about hypertension and its causes, your relational database, your anonymous database, has taught you something about the world. Physicians have been doing this for thousands of years, looking for patterns in what you see, because the patient who presents consistently with certain signs and symptoms is because philosophers of science have determined that the world actually is there and we can learn about it. It's not in our heads, and we can learn objective truths about physical reality. And therefore, if I present to you, doctor, with certain signs and symptoms, and you're a good, experienced doctor, you've got that database in your head of following a pattern. Okay. When I was in Pittsburgh, there were people doing research, this is 35 years ago, in machine learning. Machine learning at the time was also called knowledge discovery in databases. If you look at patterns in databases, you will see things that are wonderful. You will see in medicine where the etiology of various maladies, the history of them, what other correlations there are. You only were thinking about exercise and diet. Well, now we're looking at other considerations too. Before there was artificial intelligence, people who are worried about ethics in computers were saying we need to know what a responsible use is and who a responsible user is. Okay. Ruba's hand is up, please.
Doctor, I want to say that my opinion is AI is not a moral agent like humans. AI is not a moral agent. I mean, he's not cannot be responsible and show respect and deal with ethical concern. So I think there's a lot of ethical concern relating to AI use in clinical practice and in other fields. So AI is just algorithm, as you said. It's just something logical, can perform tasks, but cannot understand, cannot think, cannot understand the way the human do. So I think that it cannot replace a human rule in clinical practice. Because
maybe. Go ahead. Did I interrupt you? No. Okay.
No, doctor, that was just what I want to say.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that. Who's next? I've lost track here. Sasha? No, sorry. Danya and then Sasha.
Yes, doctor. I think in a scenario, suppose one patient came to emergency room and we have to take an action right now. And the doctor leave his phone in his room or in his office. So he have to take an action without the AI, without asking the AI. Not to go and grab his phone to search or to think what he could do or which is the best solution.
And your opinion about that is?
Not using AI. No.
Once again, the tension here is that if AI can help you save your patient's life, well, then maybe you should be using it. This is it was it Ruba who said computers cannot be moral agents. I want to read you something because I just typed into my chat GPT. Is there a good utilitarian argument for scientific rigor? Reply. Absolutely. And it's actually one of the strongest places where utilitarian reasoning shines. A utilitarian argument for scientific rigor doesn't just exist, it's almost unavoidable once you take the core principle seriously, etc. That was a robot answering a question I hope I could do as well, and maybe better than all of you. You see the tension here. It is now pretending not just to guide me in cardiovascular misadventure, it's telling me what's right or wrong. So why can't a computer be a moral agent? Well, let's not discuss that, because now we're getting out into the outer reaches here. I want you to be thinking about it. I want you to worry about it. But I also especially want you to be mindful of the fact that this is an ongoing contemporary challenge. What's an appropriate use as a student for you of these tools? What's an appropriate use as a scientist, as a clinician, as an academic administrator, whatever? What's an appropriate use? And am I an appropriate user? Some people have argued that AI is okay, but you have to learn a little bit of medicine first, or you have to learn how the machine works first, or you have to be able, and this is the big problem of explainability. We talked about privacy. We talked about errors. Now we're talking about explanation. And most people would suggest that if you cannot explain why a gram stain is significant, or why eosinophils in this number are significant, or why that sound on auscultation is significant. If you cannot explain those things, or the reaction to this drug was what it was, if all you can say is, there's a reaction, there's a sign, I Googled it, I typed it into ChatGPT, and I'm right. Why do I need to know these things? Why do I need to be able to explain the tool that I am using? And there I think we have a great and important challenge. Remember, privacy, error, explainability, and now I see Sasha's hand is up.
Doctor, I would say that I think healthcare providing has two aspects, physical one and emotional one, or psychological one. Um, and AI يعني cannot catch emotions, feelings, non-verbal language, despite a human can catch that. However, AI lack of feelings, lack of emotions. That's it.
In other words, there's a lot more to people than their biology. Right? And there's a lot more to the people who use the tools than their cognition, if you will, or their biology. That's a good point. What it leaves us with, though, and it's not a bad thing, is as we're trying to apply our foundations in the world of bioethics, foundations, we know them all. Bioethics, clinical research, public health. And now we've talked on and off about other contemporary issues. We spent a lot of time on publication and authorship. And now today, soon to be concluded, and next time we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence because it is so important and so widespread and is changing the very way you practice. Right? I want to finish itemizing these things. Sometimes there are more, 5, 6, 7. Privacy, error, explanation. You all have already identified accountability and responsibility. Right? Who is and who should be responsible? I work with a lot of lawyers, and a lot of lawyers say, yeah, if you use that AI program and your patient dies, I get to sue you, and I will win the lawsuit if your doctor did not know how the machine worked, because doctors for thousands of years have had to be able to know how their tools work. Your doctor didn't, the patient died. I win. The next lawyer says, if you don't use AI and your patient dies, I will sue you and I will win because you did not use all the available tools to save your patient's life. In other words, responsibility is either to use the computer in a responsible way as a necessary condition, because you might be making a mistake if you don't use the computer. And that is an extraordinarily interesting problem in ethics, because the lawyers don't know what to sue, who to sue, or what to claim until there's an allegation for right or wrong, or good or best practices. Best practice is for a physician or a pharmacist or a nurse to use the tools she has available in the service of her patient. And if AI will help you be more accurate, help you be more reliable, et cetera, and so forth, then it's hard to escape the conclusion that you ought to be using it. but you also ought to be using it with far more understanding than you have. And that was the last presentation. And my concern about writing and science and ethics, because ChatGPT, by the way, one of you all do this. Give me a good, is there a good deontologic argument for scientific rigor? What do you think, which Quranic surahs address artificial intelligence? Because if we're going to insist that scripture be a source of moral insight that actually is useful to us, in addition to the secular approaches, we've already seen where there are passages in many holy books that actually seem to be okay, that we would do well to listen to the Quran when it comes to this modern scientific problem. But who decides that? That's what I'm hoping. Well, what I'm hoping, I think Dr. Kosei joins me in this. This is not, there's sort of classes and there are classes. You've had a bunch of classes in your lives. You go to the class, you take notes, you get an exam, you go to the next class. Ad nauseum, ad infinitum. I think some of you know better. This is not where you're learning enough things to get a line on a CV, pass the course, got a good grade. You, if you're a good student, are worrying about this between classes. And when we're done after next week, you will continue worrying about me for the rest of your lives. Have a wonderful week. Privacy, accuracy, reliability, hence confabulation, explainability, governance and oversight, which is responsibility, accountability. And we can play with a few others. I like transparency, because a lot of the AI programs are written by for-profit corporations, and they don't want to show you what their code looks like, even though the back propagation algorithms that are used in many of this are foundations of all of it. But there are some very, very interesting twists, and they tend to be copyrighted, and they're intellectual property belonging to these companies. I would argue, given our inclination, that I don't mind your intellectual property, but don't make my pharmacy students struggle to do their job because you won't share and you won't be transparent. So I use y'all to argue, and I say, young people learning clinical skills, learning pharmacy, learning public health, learning internal medicine, learning biomedical research, need you all to be transparent. Those were the 5 things I wanted to mention that people always identify as concerns with AI. Next time, we're going to ask the next question. What if you all solve all those problems and AI is perfect? Basant, I'm going to have to ask you to hold that question for 7 days minus 2 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. See you next week. And
See you next
great. Thank you very much. See you. Bye.
My pleasure. Thank you. Shukran.